Hi, welcome to NARA Fellowship. Today I have Pamela Jaye Smith with MythWorks, and she is not only an international speaker and instructor, but she also is a very award-winning producer, director, and writer. And I really look forward to getting into learning more about her life. She's had an adventurous life. She's a learner like us, but she's also creative. So we're going to kind of do a hybrid of the creative chat and the learning about learners thing. And one of the things you might want to stick around for is that she's had a very interesting life, very adventurous. She's driven not only an oil tanker, but also a tank. So we're going to cover that story a little later on in the interview. So, Pamela, thank you very much for being on NARA Fellowship.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm really looking forward to it. And I have looked at a number of your other interviews, and they are always interesting. And I'm sure that our conversation will be as well.
Thank you very much. I look forward to it. I really enjoy just inviting people on that I would like to just talk with and get to know. So thank you very much. Um, so my first question I usually ask guests, especially if they're learners, is what was your learning journey like? Many people can answer it like from a memory of like when they started like getting really curious about computers or whatever it might be. Um, and or you can talk about your academic career uh, and then how that came into, switched you into being a lifelong learner. So, what was your learning journey like?
Well, I was very fortunate. It started really early because both of my parents were very much learners and very curious. They taught us to read when we were really young, and we had a great library in my home and my grandparents' home. So we were exposed to the classics, children's books, of course, as well, but also, magazines and the classics and music. So I just figured that that's just the way it was and didn't realize how lucky I was until I got a bit older. But I really thank my parents and my family for providing that kind of environment for us. And also, I'm of an age where more people had that. There was
Mhm.
more, in the way of libraries and books and music, and people were just, that's what they did because they weren't sitting on a screen all day long either. So it was a different time. But I was very fortunate with that, and I always had, with maybe just a couple of exceptions, really good teachers. So all the way through my, first grade through college and post grad, I've had really, really good professors. And the teachers, what I value the most, they taught us how to learn, not what to learn. And so we were taught critical thinking skills. We didn't call them that at the time. But okay, well, here's this. Now take a look at this. Or what do you think is the backstory to that? And one of the things I know that started me off into an interest in mythology was in fifth grade. When we'd come in from recess, the teacher would have us, lay our little heads down on the desk and for some quiet time for her. And she would read to us for about half an hour after the lunch recess. And through that school year, she read us the entire Iliad and Odyssey. Yeah. And at the time, I was living in a small town in Texas. And the stories, I said, I know these people. I know these stories. Rigged beauty contests and people cheating on each other and people starting fights and going on trail, all this. I said, yeah, this is great stuff. I want to know more about this. So that really made a difference. And then another thing, too, that got me started studying more in different religions was my grandparents had a copy of the Rubaiyat by Omar Khayyam, and it's Sufi Persian mysticism. And it was just wonderful and beautifully illustrated. And I really enjoyed learning from that and saw how the wisdoms of one system, whether it was Catholicism or Protestant Christianity, really tied in also with the mystical side of Islam. And then from there, you reach out into other systems and you realize how similar so many things are in the principles of them. And that kept me going on into studying comparative mythology. So I was, once again, very, very fortunate in the background in which I was brought up as far as learning goes.
So the book inspired you to get into mythology. How the story behind that?
Well, I was already interested from the having been read, the Iliad and the Odyssey, but discovering the Rubaiyat, I didn't and still don't read Persian, so it was, of course, the English translation. But I thought the beauty of it and the philosophy about how our lives are cyclical and things happen and then it happens again in another way, and the interconnectedness of things and the value of love and attention to others. It was echoing a lot of what you see in real life and also the aspirational aspects of so many spiritual systems and religions. And appreciation of nature, appreciation of the higher spiritual levels. And it was great poetry. It's many of your listeners, watchers may recognize one of the quatrains was jug of wine, a loaf of bread beneath the bough, and thou beneath the bough. Ah, this is paradisey now. So just those beautiful poetry encapsulations of life and love and light.
Cool. That's really neat. So what I'd like to do is cover a couple more questions, and then we'll go more into the MythWorks stuff.
Okay.
If that would be okay with you?
Sure.
So what are your current learning pursuits, personally and professionally?
Okay. I try to learn something new every day, and it's not difficult because nobody knows everything, right? So with one of my creative partners, we do science every day. We will read or listen to, watch something scientific, whether it's in the British Guardian newspaper, and they have a really good science section. Often it's Science Daily, which is peer-reviewed science papers covering all branches of science. Science Weekly is a very good radio show that comes on Fridays. And then there's just, National Geographic, there's Neil deGrasse Tyson's Star Talk. There's just a lot out there now where you can learn science. And what's so interesting to see these days, too, is the interlinking between different branches of science. How something that somebody thinks they're studying, geology, but they find some new application for technology, or studying biology and botany, and they find a new, that's really ancient cure for some ailment. So the cross-fertilization in science is really fascinating. And that's a pursuit both personally and professionally. What I'd like to learn more about too, though, is more about astronomy and what we're finding out about what's beyond our galaxy, and how that applies also in comparative mythology. When you look at the different creation myths of different cultures, almost everybody has a story of how all this happened. And it's really interesting to see that the more we discover scientifically, a lot of it reflects what was just kind of built into a lot of those old systems.
Do you have an example of that?
I sure do. One of them is from the Hindu philosophy. And someone asks the question, what is the nature of the universe? And the answer is, it is Indra's net of gems. And Indra is one of the main gods, main deities of Hinduism. And Indra's net of gems, and there are lots of illustrations of it. One of them that I like to show is it's a ball, but it's a net. So think of a net in a shape of a ball or a ring, and there are gems on every place where the lines cross. There's a gem, and it is said that each and every gem is its own self, but it reflects each and every other gem on the net. It's a hologram.
Uh,
There you
Interesting.
have it. Yeah, yeah.
Wow, that's cool. That's really
Oh, yeah.
cool.
When I was studying Mahayana Buddhism at University of Texas in Austin, a lot of the guest lecturers that were brought in were physicists and mathematicians to talk about the similarities in the theology, if you will, the spiritual explanations, and actual scientific facts and figures.
Fascinating. It's it's just like this whole web of knowledge, and it's just like interconnected and has so many different layers. It's fascinating where they do connect. I remember years ago, back in the 80s and 90s, there was a TV show called Connections, and it
Oh,
was like,
yeah.
I don't know
Oh,
if you remember that.
a
And
vein.
there was a gentleman, I forget the gentleman's name, something Burke or something like that. And he would go around the world and he would talk about how all these different inventions were connected to previous inventions and previous discoveries. They wouldn't have been able to exist without all this previous stuff. And one thing led to another, and each show goes through the series of the different connections that enabled, like, um, uh, heart valve to be put in the heart and stuff like that.
Oh,
It's like all these different, rubber to this to that, and I don't remember it all right now, but it was my family used to love that show. And then when it wasn't on TV anymore, you could get the VHS from the library and watch it, and that's what we
oh,
did. Really cool.
very good. Well, I've written it down to look it up. That sounds
Yeah,
great. Thank you. Thank
it
you.
was on. I think it was on PBS, but I'm not sure. Either PBS or Discovery Channel. I can't remember. It's one
Oh,
of those type of things, and it was called Connections. Something Burke, Burke, maybe. I'm not sure if that's correct or not.
okay.
But somebody in the comments could probably, if you know what I'm talking about, feel free to put it in the comments. But yeah, so I always found that fascinating, how interconnected reality really truly is.
Yeah.
And it's like big concepts um, facilitate the left and right brain thinking. I know that's not quite correct
Mhm.
anymore, but it's used as an analogy as more logical to more intuitive, creative, big picture kind of thing. But
Mhm.
that's cool. So, what speaking of religion and philosophy and stuff, what have you learned that gives you meaning?
Hmm. Excellent question. What I've learned, I think that's so important to keep in mind is that everybody has a different perspective on what's going on. And there is no single um, correct interpretation to a lot of things. Now, for science like gravity, yeah, you can say it's not there, but say that on the ninth floor balcony and give it a try, No, opinions don't count when it comes to the laws of physics, right? But for lots of other things, um, keeping an open mind, and that a lot of things change, but the eternal verities do not. So what gives me meaning is realizing that there are some of those higher truths that are always there, like the higher truth of interconnectedness, like love, like wisdom and courage and compassion. And that these systems that uphold those and promote them are so valuable. And the more that any of us, in whatever way we can still uphold and promote those, the better. And also keeping in mind that a lot of people don't want to or just won't change, but many, many people will. And many people are always looking for another answer. And so not to get discouraged when it seems like you can't push something through, whether it's benefits for a certain group of people or a certain region or all of humanity. There are so many people who are dedicated to making things better for others. And not to get discouraged because sometimes it looks like, no, it's not.
Right. So, how is, I'm sure it's like you're interested in science, you're interested in a lot of different things, and you're also interested in myth. And it's just like as you were saying, the eternal versus the pragmatic things in life. How do you think they influence each other, um, to
Hmm.
for good and for ill?
Well, that's a very interesting question. I think that interpretation. What kind of eyewear are you wearing? Are you wearing the rose-colored glasses? Are you wearing the uh, dark shades? Are you wearing glasses that are like a kaleidoscope and things keep changing? It's um, it's a real important thing to keep in mind for people that work with a wide range of other people with other experiences and other backgrounds. And so, going back to the comparative mythology and comparative religions, there are certain truths about physical reality that people mythologize. And you've got your sun gods and your moon goddess and the god of the wind and the god of the earth, or the earth is the mother goddess, and all of this. But then within sections of people, depending on where they live, you have different interpretations. One of my favorite examples of that is from Joseph Campbell, the fabulous world famous mythologist who popularized mythology for so many of us. He has a 4-part book called The Masks of God. And he pointed out in there that geography and geology influence religion and mythology. And his example was in a place like, let's say, India, where it's very lush, and many other places like that, where you've got a 5 canopy jungle, where you've got thousands of species. You find religions, spiritual systems that are pantheistic. So you'll have the sun deity, you have the moon deity, you have the tree spirits, you've got the jaguar spirits, you've got the little tiny flowers and the little tiny animal spirits, etc., etc., etc. It's very pantheistic because everything's alive and there are so many things. Go to the deserts where there is nothing but the sun and the moon, the sky, the stars, and a lot of wind, maybe. But he noted that almost all, and there aren't that many of them, monotheistic religions come out of the desert because our concept of deities and the world comes from what we see around us. I thought, well, that's really interesting. And then you take a look at more modern times, or even in ancient times, cities, and you'll find city dwellers have different interpretations of the world around us and within us than do people who live on the savannah or in a small town in a backwoods area. So Realizing it's not just the people, it's the people how the people react with the environment and how they interpret it.
That's fascinating. Thank you very much. I was like, wow, that's cool.
Oh yeah, and if you read nothing else of Joseph Campbell's, do read those 4 books, The Masks of God. They're
The Mask of
fascinating.
God. Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
4 volume set.
Wow. All right. Um, so I'm tempted to go more into mythology right now, but I have other questions staring at me right next to my computer. Um, uh, why don't we talk about um, hmm, let's talk about the mythology stuff a little bit more. We'll come
Sure.
back to learning questions in a little bit.
Okay.
But what did you do more of independent study in a mythology, or was it part of college and doctorate classes? How did you end up getting more interested in mythology from the religion book that you read?
Okay. I studied Latin starting in high school. So I got exposed to the classics there, and a lot of the reading was about the mythology of the Greeks and Romans, and then before them, the Greeks, of course. And also, I had some very good English teachers who exposed us to a lot of writings that weren't just of the whole Western cycle of, only Western Europe, that we only read books written by old dead white guys. So we got a wider range of exposure. And then continuing studying the classics at university, I learned more and more. And particularly, let's say, I still have the book right here sitting out, is Virgil's Aeneid, which was a Roman story commissioned by the Emperor Augustus. He said to the poet Virgil, listen, we've taken over from the Greeks, but we need a story. We need an origin story that kind of, pumps us up here because, Greece, yeah, they're great. And we're kind of an upstart empire here. So we need a good myth, right? So Virgil wrote the Aeneid. And in that story, he has the founder of Rome being a prince of Troy. So Troy fell. The Greeks destroyed Troy, and the Trojans were there were history. But some of the people that survived were one of the princes, Prince Aeneas. And he and his dad and his son and a bunch of his soldiers escaped. And they traveled around the Mediterranean trying to find a place to go. And they had help from the gods. And they were supposed to be going to found this new place. Oh, he took a stop off at Carthage on the north coast of Africa, and had a relationship with the queen there, Queen Dido. And he was doing great because, consort of the queen, everything was fine. His men were happy. And then Mercury, was sent to him, said, you're supposed to be on a mission here, dude. Don't get waylaid by the locals. You need to continue on because you've got a job to do. So he did. He left, and Dido was heartbroken, and she threw herself on a pyre and burned herself to death. And as he was sailing away from Carthage, there were the flames of the funeral pyre. Oh, talk about star-crossed love, right? So they eventually get to what becomes Italy, and they conquer the locals and take over and start the Roman civilization. So that their origin story is we came from these people that were a noble people, and those Greeks destroyed them. But you know what? We're still here. So they loved it. And there it is. Now I wonder if in the new movie about that whole storyline, they're going to be talking about that at all. I'm looking forward to seeing the new film. So the use of mythology I'll back up a notch. when beginning a presentation, I'll usually say, let's define mythology. What are myths? And it's not just the dusty old stories of the Greeks and Romans. It's not just other people's religion. And it's not like a grade schooler once said, a myth is a female moth. No. Myths are the stories we tell ourselves to explain the world around us and within us, and to justify the worlds we have created. And you see that a lot in national and international conflicts, where a country has, well, we are this and therefore, well, no, we're this and therefore. So you find a lot of storylines used to justify what people want to do.
Interesting. Wow. What got you into teaching? I mean, you taught, you went from learning to teaching. How did you learn to teach?
Oh, well, part of that was actually part of it was in the Christian church where I was a member during my teen years. And as a number of us did, we also taught Sunday school. We were kind of taught to teach the younger kids. And then also in high school back then, and it's many schools do still, but you could study speech and debate, and that was a good training for seeing different sides of a story, and also about presenting ideas. So it was kind of how the curriculum was at that time. And then how I really started getting into teaching the MythWorks and story and all of that was I'd been studying out here the physics of metaphysics, basically, at the Philosophical Research Society here in Los Angeles. And it was a wonderful place. I mean, it still is. And we were learning so much. At the time, however, I was also producing and directing documentaries and commercials and aerospace things. And the teacher had an assignment for all of us. And people in the class were from all walks of life and professions. And she said, okay, put what you've learned in these classes into what you do professionally. I thought, well, good luck with that. Let's see. But one of the things we had been taught were the chakras, which are the ancient actual physiological parts of you, but also they help explain different character traits and the ways that people interact with the world. I thought, well, that's great if you're doing stories. Use the chakras, put people on different chakra levels, and they're going to act differently and react differently. So, okay, we can work with that. And archetypes and symbols and all of the physics of metaphysics being explained as why we do the things we do and how we can do it better. So I turned it into presentations on character building, how to create better characters that have more internal integrity. And then you can put different people at different levels up against each other for dramatic conflict and all of that. And I certainly didn't invent it, but I discovered it was something that I could use. So that was really, really helpful. And then for about 10 years was doing both the MythWorks teaching and presenting and story consulting, while also continuing to do all the media producing, etc. Yeah, so I was very fortunate that way.
Cool. My dad was an actor, writer, director, and he also loved teaching. And so he taught media classes, voiceover, screenwriting, filmmaking, at different colleges and different educational institutions here in Colorado. And so I grew up working with my dad, not only in media production, but also helping as a teacher assistant, uh, coordinating all the paperwork and all that kind of stuff. And my brother, the three of us worked together with my mom as my dad's writing partner.
Hmm.
And my brother is the smart one. He was the video editor, graphic artist, and audio engineer. Um, and he handled the tech stuff while I handled more of the administrative stuff. And he loved teaching, and he did both at the same time, just like you.
Hmm.
Um, and so it was very edifying in helping other people. And I, I, I'm part of a little corner of the internet that has one gentleman who is an icon carver, Jonathan Pageau, who talks about symbolism, bringing back the ancient wisdom to modern ears and modern eyes. And he's a YouTuber as well. And so he talks about more from the biblical perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but he is a fascinating gentleman, and I watch some of his stuff periodically. Um, but so that was my interest in learning more about you, is like you also do the myth thing, and that's kind of a fascinating thing because I don't know. I know some myths. I wasn't classically trained or anything like that. I've kind of known of them, but I've never like read all of them. The Greek gods kind of like they're really weird people. I don't really like them. I like the owl lady, Artemis. I like her,
Yes.
wisdom.
Yeah.
But the other ones fool around way too much.
Oh,
In background, I'm like, okay, I don't want to mess with you guys. But there's a lot of truth that from what I've learned over the years, and especially through Peterson and Jordan Peterson and Jonathan Pageau and other people in this, in our little corner of the internet, is there's a lot of truth that are embedded in the stories about human nature, reality, um, how people really act. Different people act in different ways, like you were saying with the different characters and viewing your characters with different chakras or whatever you said. If I'm saying the word right.
oh yes,
Um,
yes.
and so that was psychology before psychology came around, you know. And so there's an ancient wisdom there going on that I was clueless about. As a kid, I never understood that. And and so there's a lot of wisdom to be had from understanding those myths and everything. And that's why I'm like, I want to talk to you. It's gonna be cool.
Wow, right you are. And how wonderful that you have that whole media background with your family too.
Yeah,
That's
it was
great.
an interesting childhood growing up. My brother and I and my mom have vision and hearing handicaps, so I worked in media production, which is ironic in itself, you know. But there was a lot of stuff that we couldn't see and hear properly, so my dad were our eyes and ears. But so my brother was his hearing loss; he couldn't hear certain frequencies, the higher pitch sounds and stuff. So my dad would coach him on that stuff, but he understood the tech stuff really well.
Hmm.
And you know, unfortunately, my brother's eyes are no longer, they're, they're not, they're worse, but they're not gone. And so he can't really do that work anymore. Um, but we grew up in it. And so we knew stuff that was 10, 20 years old. So we're like, we don't know what the current stuff is. I'm noodling around with, StreamYard and stuff like that. It's like figuring that out. But, yeah, so growing up in storytelling and movies and TV, I loved growing up with the old classic movies. Danny Kaye and Fred Rogers and uh, yeah, Fred and Ginger,
Yes.
dancing partners and all that. I love the golden age of you know um, movies and TV and stuff. But I haven't watched anything currently. I would say the Marvel comics are kind of like the myth of modern times in a way. They're based on myth and they kind of have that life in them like a real myth. The people are captivated by their imagination are captivated by them. Um, and so it's like, what do you think about the modern myth of the comic books as compared to the ancient myth of of yesteryear? What are your thoughts on that?
I would agree with you that the superheroes are the modern versions of a lot of the gods and goddesses. And whether it's Hercules, who can do just about anything, or Mercury, Hermes, who flies, and he's got the winged helmet and the wings on his shoes, and he could just fly anywhere he wants to go. Or Perseus, who had the wonderful shield of I think it was gold, maybe. But anyway, he used his magical shield against the Gorgon Medusa, who turned everybody else to stone. And he just threw up a reflector, right? And she turned herself to stone. And he had the flying horse. And then you've got in the Norse mythology, you've got the Valkyries, the warrior maidens on the flying horses, or, they fly around. Sometimes you'll see the horses with wings, sometimes not. But yeah, they come in to save the day. And most mythologies have the hero myths. So there's always the superhero who has some kind of special powers, invisibility often, flying, very typical, strength, craftiness, wisdom. I like that you mentioned earlier the goddess with the owl, Athena, and she was the goddess of wisdom, war, and civilization. What a great combination.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think the whole fascination with superheroes is not just an outpicturing of how endangered a lot of people feel these days because of all of the threats to individuals, to their rights, to humanity, to the planet. It's a pretty rough time here these days with all the things that can go wrong and are going wrong. So the need for superheroes to keep people uplifted and to inspire them. I could do that too. Not just the flying part, but the saving other people part.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting. It's one of those things where maybe does life imitate art or art imitate life? Both, particularly now.
Yeah.
Because boy howdy, we need superheroes and we've got them. It's so wonderful to see so many people standing up and saying, no, this is how it should be. And we're going to work towards it.
Yeah, that's really cool. Talking about overcoming stuff, let me go back to my question here. What challenges do you need to overcome and what's holding you back?
Okay. Well, my biggest challenge is technology. And I won't say I'm quite a technophobe, but I do know Morse code, not really, but I need to study it. And I do have some pigeons out in my backyard in case everything goes down. I need to communicate with carrier pigeons. Not really, but so technology is my biggest challenge, I think, as far as getting things done. It works pretty much fine all the time, but I was without, as many of us were here in Hollywood a month or so ago, we were without internet and telephones. If you were with AT&T, we were without for 6 days, almost a week without.
Wow.
You really
That's
realize.
pretty significant.
Very significant. Yeah. So the challenge of just technology and being able to do more with it. Mm-hmm. Then also the discernment that it takes these days to realize what's authentic online, what's real, what is spam and what are scams, and what is AI and what is slop and who's trying to manipulate whom, which is why I love having real books. They don't change overnight, right? They're the same as when you got them, or the same when they were written 300 years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and another challenge, I think, is anti-intellectualism. And it's always been there in some way in most cultures. And there's an interesting thing, Valerie, from the wisdom teachings. And it's said that, and this was said a long time ago, the next battle for the soul of humanity is going to be on the mental planes.
Mm.
And what you see when people are coming in trying to control others, the first thing they do is get rid of the thinkers, get rid of the artists, stop education, so that they can maneuver you and manipulate you from the emotional lower plane as opposed to the mental planes or the spiritual. And then, of course, you react physically according to your emotions and are either not taught to think or thinking is suppressed. So I think that's, not just what's holding me back, but I think a lot of us, we have to keep moving against all of these imposed barriers towards being and expressing our own regular selves and our higher selves.
Mm. I know technology can be challenging. I'm kind of like an intermediate in technology. It's like I can figure some stuff out. Like I've been doing websites since late 90s, but
Wow.
I'm not like there's a whole range, a spectrum of people who do websites. There's the people who code HTML and CSS and all that. I'm
Yeah.
not in their league. I don't have the mental wherewithal to actually figure that out. I'm like I can kind of figure out a little bit of what's called markup and make a link sort of, but I have to actually have like something I can copy and paste and put my website in there, the link in there, and I'm like, okay, there we go. But uh so I'm enough to be dangerous to get myself into trouble.
Oh dear.
I have some really great friends and my brother who helped me try to troubleshoot what's going on. And they're like, they have the more logical brain of like deducing what's going on by troubleshooting. And
Uh-huh.
most web people learn by doing and making mistakes and untangling their messes. Um, but technology is not, you know, it's not something that we naturally think of. I mean, I know Mac and Apple tried to make it more intuitive, but
Mm-hmm.
I can't even figure out how my brother operates his iPhone. It's like I need the Android button thing to figure out what to do with the thing. You know, I'm like, how do you know which is swipe and stuff? What? There's no instruction. There's no like here's a manual. Kind of thing. It's like you just do it. And I'm like, I'm trained out of that. You know, um, but it's like it's so it's interesting. It's like technology is so helpful and so wonderful, especially in medicine and all these different areas.
Yes.
And but it doesn't replace the. I just watched. I don't know if you know of Simon Sinek. He's a business guy. He's not a mythologist. He's an optimist. Calls himself an optimist, and he's very much about trying to help people run more ethical businesses and make more money being ethical.
Ooh.
And it's actually proven that if you will do his like exercise plan, which is basically start with why. His book is to start with why, and he talks about the infinite game.
Mm.
And so I watched him talk with a friend of his that he helped publish his book about uncommon hospitality. I can't remember the gentleman's name. I apologize, but I just watched it last night, and it was interesting. They were talking about AI and what AI will not replace is the human dynamic. It
Yes.
can maybe it can make art by stealing other people's art. Maybe it can do code and butcher the code, and people have to troubleshoot what's wrong with the code. But what it can't do is it can't do service. It's really bad at the human connection of being of another person seeing and hearing and acknowledging another human being.
Oh, sure.
It was really a
Huh.
great. It was talking about the essence of hospitality, is that spirit of loving another person, and it was very common back in the ancient days, and they talked about the ethics of hospitality. It was like baked in. There was no hotels. So
Hmm.
basically
Yeah.
you invited strangers into your home, and they had a certain thing they had to do. There was certain protocols they would do, but you would give them housing for a night or however long they needed, and food. And it was this system, ethical system across the ancient world, that if you violated that, you were scum, you know.
Yeah,
And
totally.
it's in the Odyssey or the Iliad. I apologize, I never read it, but I've heard other people talk about it, and
Mhm.
it's just fascinating that just acknowledging another human being, just like they were talking about in the interview, how you know what you really want is the grocery stocker, as they're putting the stuff on the shelf, is you ask them where the peanut butter is, and then they acknowledge you, and they try to tell you where it is. They either point you or they take you there, and usually the ones that take you there are more gracious, um, and a little bit more, customer service savvy.
Right.
It's like you're gonna get lost.
Right.
But and so that's why we have people doing stuff. It's not just to stock the shelf. I mean, it would be really wonderful if all the hard labor could be taken off many people's backs, because a lot of people's health issues would go away if they didn't have to do hard labor. But there's just certain things that the human body is embodied to do, and it includes hard labor and customer service, and acknowledging people and interacting with them. And they were talking about how the the technologists, they miss that dynamic, because they're thing people. Most of them are into the things and the processes, and many of them probably are introverts and want to, like, not engage with people. And some people are extroverts and they love engaging with people. And so it's like this whole dynamic and stuff. It's like even the introverts want people. They do. They like to socialize and stuff. It's just on their own terms. But you know what? We have AI and we have all of we have the ancient problems and we have the modern problems we do now. But what would you say is one of the things that we could learn, that you taught, military people, you've taught media people, you've taught corporate people, you taught the FBI. What what are some things from myth that you were able to glean from, to enable and help people do their jobs better?
It kind of goes back to what you were saying there, where some people are more inclined towards things, other people are more inclined towards people, and other people are more inclined towards ideas. And then there's all the various combinations of those. So a lot of what I teach is based on the chakras and the archetypes, let's say the archepaths, and how different types of people, you need to deal with them differently. So as a leader, if you can pretty quickly assess where somebody is, then you can speak their language, if you will, in order to motivate them. And let's just say using the chakra system, where you go from, just very briefly, the lowest is about sheer survival. The sacral is about sex, fear, and money. And I was giving this once, and somebody said, I don't understand how those are all connected, Pamela, sex, fear, and money. And everybody else in the class just turned around and went, You don't? So, yeah. And then the next one up is personal power and me, and it often turns into separatism. The higher level of that is more group oriented. Let's all work on this together. And then you come to the throat chakra, and that's about thinking. and putting ideas into words. It's about science, it's about finance, it's about mechanics and technology and assessing things. And then the ideal place to be is up at the ajna. You'll see this in the Bindi dot and in a lot of the Eastern philosophies and religions, where you'll see it's the golden eye, it's the third eye, and it often shows up in art and iconography. And that's the place. And this is a fabulous things, a fabulous example for leaders to get. The Ajna Center is named after Prince Arjuna, who was a Hindu prince in the Mahabharata, which is one of their big history, religious, spiritual books. And the story goes he was out on the battlefield before a big battle. And he's there with his charioteer, and he's looking across towards the enemy. His problem is he's supposed to save his country and save his people. The attackers are his uncle and his cousins. And there's another law that says you aren't supposed to shed familial blood. So what's he going to do? Well, Arjuna was fortunate. His charioteer happened to have been the god Krishna. Always be sure your chauffeur, your charioteer, is really good. And so Krishna said, dude, let's talk. And he showed him the difference between the higher duty, the higher result, and the lower, more cultural, well, that's the rule that we have here, and we follow this rule. But there's a higher truth. There's a higher good. And so with that straightened out for him, fine. Next morning, dawn comes up, they get in the chariot, rides off into battle. The iconography is really interesting. You've got the war chariot, and Arjuna is standing there in the back of the chariot with his bow drawn, his arrow ready to fly. Krishna is driving the chariot, and the horses are the point here. You've got to have your horses all going in the same direction at the same speed to get anywhere. Sometimes it's 3 horses, the mental, physical, and emotional bodies. Sometimes it's 4 horses. They'll put in spiritual. Sometimes it's the 5 senses, and you'll see 5 horses. But the message is the same. You have to have a unity among your team and a leader to get to where you need to go to do the service you need to do.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah, there's so much practical wisdom in the myths. So teaching about those things, and then also teaching about the 5 archetypes, the major archetypes, if you will, of the warrior, the scientist, the magician, clergy, and the lover. And each of those has 3 levels, and each of them has 3 approaches. And the approaches would be emotional, or mental, or synthesized. And these are all valuable tools for character assessment of other people and character assessment of yourself, and then good character building tools.
So I'm going to push back a little bit, but not in a antagonistic, mean way, more of like intellectual curiosity. So, in my little corner of the internet, Jordan Peterson popularized something that already existed that was considered kind of the most scientifically accurate personality assessment thing called the 5 personality traits. And I'm sure you've heard of that before, right?
Oh, yeah, along with the Myers-Briggs and the Enneagrams and all of Maslow's pyramid.
Yeah.
Sure, lots of systems.
And so how do you explain to someone who would prefer to do the basic 5 personality traits as opposed to the archetypes that you were explaining of the 5, like the scientist and everything? What are the benefits and the pros and cons of both? in your opinion?
Okay. I'm not that familiar with the 5 levels that Peterson. I'm going to go look it up,
Yeah.
but just like with the Enneagrams and the Myers-Briggs and Maslow's hierarchy, so too with the archepaths and the chakras. They're all versions of interpretations of the same principles, I think. And so they come about at different times in different places, in different cultures, in different languages, if you will. What kind of jargon do you speak? So if you're putting out there the idea that we have lower instincts and we have higher instincts and we've got levels in between, we have different ways of engaging with the world, and we can pick up a stitch if we're too much in our heads and we need to get more physical, or we need more heart, or whatever. So if a system acknowledges that, this is my opinion, if a system acknowledges that and gives people tools to work with to help them better understand themselves and others, and to improve whatever that means for them and for their system, all the better.
Cool. Cool. So, it kind of dovetails into one of my questions I want to ask you for my learning question.
Uh-huh.
Um, is what internal and external problems do you face?
My biggest internal problem is time management. Nobody else has this problem, I'm sure. But
No one else. No, not
yeah,
me. Nah.
yeah. When you look at your to-do list in the morning and then you go over it at night and you go, what happened? Now, and I think that's why retreats, particularly for writers and artists, are so valuable, because you're only there to write. And nobody's going to come say, oh, you want to do this? Or, oh, I need this. Or, could you please help me with that? Or you get distracted and say, I think I'll just watch this movie before I finish the next chapter, right? So, time management is my biggest internal problem, which is also kind of external because the world calls on us. So, there's that. External, I think the biggest external problem I have these days is a common one, which is, what can you trust?
Mhm.
Can you trust what you see? You just saw a video that said XYZ did XYZ. Did they really? Was that really them? You don't know. How do you know? So it's a problem of authenticity, of veracity. What can you trust?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for those of us who work with other people and with other organizations, that's a real important thing to try to figure out. Fortunately,
Coming.
most of the
Oh, I
time,
apologize. Go ahead.
I would say most of the time I use real books,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
obviously that doesn't do for, current events. But
Right. Yeah. So I'm coming up on the hour, and I want to be respectful of your time. Um, so I have a couple little questions I'd like to ask, and I'd like to get into the story of the tank and the oil rig in a little bit. But um, but let me see what. So in addition to books, what are some helpful resources, types of tools, or things that you found that are helpful in learning, whatever you are learning or working on?
okay, well, like certainly books, and I would urge people to, if you can, get your books from local bookstores or from small bookstores. Support them as opposed to the big conglomerate monopolies, and or buy them directly from the author. Whether it's, well, better with books, it's hard to do with music, but anyway. um, a tool that I found helpful, and I think it's more and more important these days when we are so universally connected is learn another language. It's good for your brain in the first place. And it's also, I think, just helpful for realizing that your way isn't the only way and that there are many, many other ways to do things. And some people learn a language that is spoken by people where they live. And other people will choose a different language that's maybe more obscure. I have one friend from university, and they studied Czechoslovakian. I said, why? I just thought it was interesting. Okay. And then they were on a trip once in South America. They were on some tour down in South America, and there was another group of people there. And he said, I could understand what they were saying. They were speaking Czechoslovakian. So he went over and said hello, and they had a little conversation. You never thought he'd have to speak it, right? Or get a chance to, but out in the real world. So, uh, also, I have another friend who travels a lot. And he says, you need to know, wherever you're going, you need to know how to say in that language, I want this, this, and this to eat or drink. And where can I find? I need directions. So you need to know how to order food and how to ask for directions. If you learn nothing else, at least try to learn those.
Yeah.
So that's important. I think it's an excellent tool is to learn another language. And once again, just like studying music is good for your brain, learning another language is good for your brain. Obviously, it's easier when you're younger, but you can still do it when you're older.
Yeah.
Then I think also actually playing games. Now, a lot of us play Wordle or Word Search or solitaire or mahjong or the games online, and that's great. But also maybe do something physical like play chess. Okay, I'll admit, I have a 3D chess game. I'd haul it out here if it was close by. I've had it for 12 years. I still haven't learned how to play it. I've got the instruction book, but it's just like, I don't know.
It's nice to look at.
Yeah, oh, it is. It is. It's a lot of fun, yes.
Aw.
So I think I would say to people another tool besides what we were just talking about with language is we can look at what the Greeks called the seven liberal arts. And you find this in Freemasonry also. And I have the list right here so I can read it. I should have memorized it, but I haven't yet.
Right.
And that is grammar, logic, rhetoric, which is public speaking, arithmetic, geometry, astronomy, and music. That's what the ancients were saying we should know. And I once read also, Valerie, that the Spartans, who were in that big war with the Athenians for 23 years and Peloponnesian Wars, but the Spartans, tough guys, right? 300 is the movie. They learned dance and music so they could be more agile in battle.
Hmm. That rings true because I know football players have learned ballet so they
What?
can be more. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
tell me more. Tell me more.
I don't remember it very much. I remember learning it in junior high or high school or something, that they would take ballet um, and dance so they could be more agile and do more quick turns and things. Um,
Wow.
I don't know if that's still true or not, but that's what I remember hearing long ago. So
That's
you'll have
really,
to fact check me because I could have misunderstood being hard of hearing and stuff, but I'm like, oh, that's cool.
yeah, and it makes perfect sense, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The dance and music to have because there is a rhythm to how the body moves and everything, and so
Yeah.
martial artists know this, um, and you know different martial arts from different around the world and stuff. There's there's katas, and there's kind of a musical. There's a rhythm to the back and forth, um, exchanging uh, strikes and blows or whatever it is, kind of thing.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And also, I read a couple books on um, the ancient school of thought. One was, I can't remember the title of it right now, but I can email it to you.
Please.
Um, but it was talking about, there was two of them. One was about openness and secrecy and the age-old medieval back and forth between those two um, paradox of human knowledge. Some people were very much into openness, and other people were very much into secrecy with knowledge. And then there was another book that was talking about the evolution of the Christian academy, from um, ancient Roman Greece education all the way through the Christian era and then all into modern times in the 80s and 90s. And it was a fascinating read. It was more of an overview kind of thing, which I could handle. The other Openness and Secrecy book I did not finish. I just
Oh,
went through different chapters that were interesting to me. It was a very academic book. And I'm like, I love this, but I can't understand all this stuff. And it's like all the French, the Latin words for those three, there was like three main things that they learn and seven main things that they learn. And I cannot pronounce it to save my life. It's written down in my notes somewhere. But what you were saying, the list of those different things were important. It went from the evolution of uh, passing down knowledge to each generation to starting to innovate and create. Um, it was the beginnings in like 16 or 1700s is when all of a sudden it started crystallizing. I think Francis Bacon, maybe, if I remember right,
yeah.
and some other people started thinking more, not just passing knowledge down to each generation, but creating knowledge and creating inventions and um, creating new information to be more pragmatic to do things with, whether it be engineering or artistic or whatever it might be. That was the age of when things were being made to glorify the different leaders of that age, but also for civilization as itself. Everything from glass making to engineering to bridges to ship making to forts, um, uh, fortifications for castles and things like that, for protection and things like that. So there was a lot of engineering and stuff that went on, and so there was a shift of just passing down knowledge for wisdom's sake. And
Mhm.
we have gone we have gone from so we've kind of in baked into the knowledge passing the generation was wisdom on how to be a good person. It wasn't, because it was colored by the Christian culture at the time. You know, the
Right.
ancients didn't have, being a good person, it'd be a good citizen kind of thing. But what we take for granted in our culture is a lot of Christian stuff seeped into secularism, loving thy neighbor. You know, that's the Christian thought, Christian, principle. Um, and so what happened over time and centuries is we stripped out of our higher education the ethics of being a person. And so we went from just head knowledge and lack of wisdom. And that's why many things we have trouble with today is there's a lack of wisdom in current, social, economic, and political sphere is because we didn't pass on the wisdom from the previous generations to the next generation that were more from the ancient times. And so the human nature tends to swing from pendulum to pendulum on extremes all the time. We have trouble with balance.
We do.
Innovation as well as wisdom. and so we need both,
Yeah.
you know. But that was some. I'll send you an email with those books, so you might find them fascinating. I think one of I think one of the ladies who wrote um the openness and secrecy book, I think her name is Pamela as well, if I remember correctly. But yeah, but that's so I'm really glad you brought that up because that's a big thing. I just can't see a lot of the names and the words and the Latin words. Like
Well,
it's
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Like
No,
so
it's
cool.
it's true. If you're unfamiliar with the terminology, it slows me down.
So um let's go into your adventures of driving the oil truck, the oil tanker, and the tank. How did those come about? Was it part of a production thing you were involved with, or something else entirely?
Well, the first one actually it was an oil rig. It was
Oil rig. I apologize.
the largest oil rig at that time in the Gulf of Mexico, and that was a project related trip. And we were working on developing a screenplay, most of which took place on an oil rig. So we got in touch with a number of the oil companies to see if anybody could get us out on a rig to do a, you know, location tour, research trip. And Texaco came through and they said, sure, we'll take you out to the rig. You can be there for 2, 3 days and you can film. That's just fine. And this was just a scouting trip. So we flew to New Orleans and they took us out in a helicopter about 100 miles out into the Gulf of Mexico. And we landed on this oil rig and spent a couple of days out there. It was amazing. And, the huge towers, and it sits on four big hollow pillars with then like pontoons between them, sort of like a catamaran, but, bigger. You know what oil rigs look like out there. And the size of it was so incredible. It was like you feel like you're this tall. Now, the guys, I went with my two partners, they climbed up the tower. I did not. No, thank you. But I did go up into the crane, and the crane driver showed me how to operate the crane. So I got to swing the crane around a little bit. And then the second in command said, well, why don't you come down into the room where we drive this thing and, take a look. And, and we were filming, taking pictures and all. And he was standing there and he was pushing some levers and all. And it was like something out of, the Enterprise starship, right? All the controls. And he looked up and he said, you want to drive this for a bit? We're moving it about a mile down the road. Now, what road? Okay. The road is way down, thousands of feet down there. And he said, here, push this lever and push this one and hold them steady. So basically, all I had to do was stand there and push the levers, and I drove the oil rig. But I thought that was so cool. And we learned a lot. Yeah, it was a good research trip. We learned a lot and met some really interesting, nice people, and got a real appreciation for the people who are out there making those things happen.
Mm.
And often it's dangerous too. That's dangerous work, putting their lives on the line as well. So it was a very interesting trip.
Cool. All
And
right,
then,
and go ahead.
oh, you're asking the questions.
We can ask about segue to the tank driving.
Okay. When I was a consultant for the military, I was in an organization called the Advanced Warfighting Working Group. And that was formed after the fall of the Berlin Wall. And we had what was called the peace dividend. So the Army was trying to figure out, as were all of our armed services, well, now that we're not involved in the Cold War and we don't have a big enemy, what are we going to do? Let's see what else we can do with all this stuff that we have and all this knowledge and all of these people. So there was a lot of spin off into commercial and, just public benefit, a lot of the technology. And they were digitizing. So they asked me to be part of this group, and I went in and, taught them about the archetypes and all this and ancient mythology about warriors, blah, blah, blah. Well, it was at Fort Knox, and that's where the tanks drivers are trained. So I got to go into a simulator and drive a tank, but unfortunately, I drove it over a cliff. But it was a simulator, so it didn't hurt anything. And then another time when I went out, they said, "Would you like to really drive a tank on the training course?" "Yes, please." So I did. And now there was somebody right there beside me, but I got to actually drive the tank around the training course. And I thought, oh, this is so totally cool. I felt like an 8-year-old boy, right? Going, wow, this is so neat.
So, so what were the handles? Was it a steering wheel, or is it just levers and things? Or
it was like a half steering wheel, like you see on some airplanes, where it's not a fully round, but there's little arcs on the sides. And
okay.
then, yeah, levers as well, and pedals and stuff. And
Wow,
there's
that's awesome.
it was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was.
Oh, did you go in a straight line, or did you curve around or anything like that?
It was both. They had,
Oh,
it was like a big sort of racetrack,
ah,
not like Formula One or stuff, but yeah, they had straightaways and then turns in different directions, and then some weaving and some ups and some downs, and yeah,
that's so cool. That's really cool.
it
Well,
was.
I have a couple more follow-up questions, and we can wrap up. And I appreciate your time.
Okay.
Um, um, what have you learned that you found helpful?
I have learned that travel is really important. And even if it's just traveling by going to a museum or watching a documentary about a place or doing some research, you don't have to actually physically travel. But if you have the opportunity to, it's wonderful, because what it can do is open your mind and help you begin to see that your way is not the only way. And it's also interesting to be in places where you're the minority. That gives you a real different shift on things and perspectives and cultures and interactions between people. A friend once said he had studied a lot about war. He was military adjacent, and he'd studied a lot of the battles. He said, when I actually went to Gettysburg, the battlefield, he said, everything that I had studied about it all of a sudden came together. And he said, I got full body chills, and they didn't go away for the whole time I was there. So the physical impact of going to a place where things happened can be really expansive. And then you can learn whatever lessons there are to learn from what happened there, hopefully. I think Linda Sager has a very good book called Beyond Linear Thinking. And it's about interconnectivity and web thinking. And I would highly recommend that everybody put that in their library. Beyond Linear Thinking by Dr. Linda Sager, who you did have a conversation with.
Yeah, she was wonderful. I'm sorry that she's passed away, but I
Yeah.
was privileged to actually interview her, and you are a dear friend of hers, and so she recommended I contact you, and I'm like, yeah, that would be fantastic. So, so I let's I'll try to remember to put that in the show description, the book. I might email you so that I don't forget.
Sure. Sure.
And that way I can link to it wherever it might be. So that would be cool. Because yes, what is aside from the travel and the and the linear thinking book? Um, what are there anything else that you can think of that that you found helpful for yourself?
Yes, very much so. And I, it's a three-part thing: listen, ask questions, and then listen. And too often, when people are in conversation with others, they're just listening to find out when the break is so that they can chime in and say what they want to say.
I'm totally not guilty of that. Trying
You're,
to be a better listener by doing these. It's like I really want to listen because I really enjoy talking with people. So that was really good. I remember a dear friend of ours who used to work with Robert Duvall. He said he learned, you know, listen, react, then listen as an actor. And so it's very similar to what you say. And
yeah.
to actually listen, um, I need to be a better listener with my family.
Well, I think we could
I'm
all be
putting myself
better.
on camera. I'm going to be a better listener.
I think you're doing very well, by the way,
Oh,
because
thank you very much.
here
Thank
you
you.
are doing it. You're doing it professionally. So I think
Uh,
it's working. I think it's working.
yeah, I just need to be more consistent with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoy our chat. Um, do you have any thoughts or questions for me?
Yeah, I do come to think of it, and I'm just now thinking of it. Is there a consistent thing that people bring up in your talks with them that you could say, here's a pattern right now in what people are concerned about, what they're hopeful about? Are you seeing any connecting thread through all the diverse people that you are talking to?
The majority of people I talk to are learners. I'm trying to branch out and include more creative people as well as memento makers. So that might shift my thing. Um, Many people, when I ask them about um, what resources or types of things or tools that people found helpful, they're very organic. They're very much answering like you do. There's some, once in a great while, they'll say blink list or something like that. But most of the time, they're things that are easily accessible, like YouTube,
Mhm.
for learning how to change something in a washer. It's we have. I remember back in my high school days when I was in the occupational school for media production, and they were calling it the superhighway back in the 90s. And it is the superhighway today, the internet and YouTube and everything. It's like you can find stuff online so much easier. Verifying that it's actually true, that's another matter. We'll put that aside. You still got to do the academic proof and pudding thing. Um, but basically, like how to fix a bike, or like one dad tries to teach other dads how to take care of their daughter's hair. It's like doing
Oh,
these things. It's very sweet, and it's like trying to be a father to people who didn't have fathers. And teaching them, it's like grandfathers would do this, and also 40-year-olds would do lessons on YouTube explaining how to do things for
huh.
someone who never got trained by a father, whatever the circumstances might be. um so there's like really edifying, good people out there trying to help other people using YouTube and the internet and websites. And just I discovered, there's this whole section of online websites or personal websites that considered the indie web, two words. Indie web, one word, is an organization that kind of helps facilitate more information about how to do your own websites and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So I just recently learned about that in December, um, and I've been on a rabbit trail since. But there's a lot of good people who are like putting information online to help people do different things that they want to do. Um, And I found that edifying, and a lot of people reference those as as uh, as resources for people. They do say books in libraries. Um, there there's a wide variety of people, so I do sense from my interviews that I've done that a lot of people are very much like you, Pamela, where they're saying learn a language. They're saying, you know, open your mind, learn things you don't know before. Um, and the majority of us are learners, and so that attracts us and invigorates us and stuff. Um, I'm 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 not an academic, so I'm not like very scholarly in how I'm doing this. I just have my little questions that I mostly ask, um, but it's it's a very organic thing. It's the vibe that I'm getting from most people. The tools and the tricks and things that I thought people would tell me, it's not very common. It's more organic, you know, uh, books, libraries, YouTube. Um, um, don't don't give up. You know, like one of the questions I'm going to ask you is first. Did you have any other thoughts or questions for me
Yeah, do you have about a week?
about a week?
Yeah, that we could talk about it. So
Oh, I would love to. We can make it happen. Yeah.
many, many questions. Yeah, I would ask you one more question. I know it could be a very, very long answer, but because you are
Okay.
a professional in media and you come from a
Hmm.
media professional family,
Hmm.
do you see the current state of media, which seems to be fracturing in many ways and yet growing in so many other ways? Are you optimistic or pessimistic about the state of media now, all the way from IMAX to vertical dramas? Good, bad, no,
I
no.
don't know what vertical drama is.
Oh, that people shooting something on their cell phone, like a little
Oh, okay.
two
Gotcha.
minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I am for the last 20 years I haven't been watching TV and movies very much. I'll like watch like with my group of friends, they call themselves a geek family. I'll
Oh,
watch them. I watched K-pop Demon Hunters. That was fascinating. I really enjoyed that. It was a really
yeah.
fun, creative, musically beautifully done film. Um, and I may have you know ethical, not ethical, but what's the word? I may not agree with the worldview, but I think it's gorgeous. And I think it's very nice that they were able to do something that encapsulated Korean culture so much. I'm like, that's really neat. That we need more of those kind of things.
Yeah.
Um, uh, and I I'm mostly online, mostly listen to music. I mostly do some YouTube, watching in my little corner of the internet of different things, and I'll go off on rabbit trails and stuff. I I think I think from my perspective, I think over the last 20 to 40 years, people have been shifted in their ideology from mainstream media. I can see it. I can see the difference. Back in the early 80s and 90s, um, my dad noticed a shift in people's who came to the voiceover classes. We would do 6 weeks, one night a week, and then 2 days in the studio on a weekend, immerse them in the studio and record pieces all day from 9 to 5, and they would get better. They would hear themselves hissing, creating sibilance. They would understand the control their breath better. They would just get everything under control on their own. We didn't have to point it out. They would cringe at themselves. One thing we noticed that it went from the 80s to the 90s and 2000. People became more me oriented. They're
Um,
very much more centered. They there used to be more of a group dynamic where they would party, they would do conga lines during the breaks and stuff to the break music, and that didn't happen. Everybody waited for to hear themselves instead of, they would politely, like in the 90s and 2000s, they would politely clap for the others, but they were just focusing more on themselves. But this,
Mhm.
back in the early 80s and 90s, people were much more like, that was fantastic, you know, and they would be much more into supporting each other. And I've seen that shift. Um, and I think we are much more fragmented for good and for ill. Like Pastor Paul Vanderklay talks about how the future is always going to be better than you think and worse than you think. It's both at the same time. And so, um, as an outsider looking at everybody consume TV and movies, they it I lost the connection. The like, you watch that too, we commiserate together kind of thing. I get it periodically when I watch like K-pop Demon Hunter. I'm back in plugged into culture again, but most of the time I'm unplugged, and so I see people. There's like they're meaning making from their entertainment instead of more books and more of the traditional philosophies and religions. Um, the Sometimes entertainment becomes their religion. I've noticed that, um, and it becomes so enmeshed in the make believe world that they use it to escape the things they are dealing with, and it's for good and for ill. I mean, some people are dealing with really bad, hard stuff, and they need a book to escape and just kind of reset and face everything again. Um, but I I don't think I think it's like I like to dive into my own when I listen to certain types of instrumental music that I really enjoy that have a whole bunch of names that I don't remember what they're called. It's Spotify tells me what they are. Um, at the end of the year, I'm like, oh, so I listened to that. Okay, that's cool. And it's like I'm like, I don't know what it. I just like the sound of the music, and I like to think in my own mind and to daydream. Most people like to do things or engage with entertainment of some sort. Um, they, I don't see many people um, have more of an intellectual life. I think I did notice a pattern that when I was heavily involved with all the administrative duties in my media background, I really soaked in make believe entertainment, books and videos and movies and stuff. And then as I got unplugged from doing a lot of that, I end up pursuing learning more as edutainment for myself. Being real honest, it's not the best ulterior motives to be learning, but I do enjoy learning for enjoyment. I'm not scholarly. I'm not studious on it. I'm not academic about it, but I just like doing rabbit trails and learning things. Um, uh, Most people get enough of that information density from their work and they want to kind of unplug and diffuse. And I see that in some people that I'm friends with and stuff that they just need to play a video game for a while and just diffuse and just, not deal with all the massive information. Um, I One of the questions I was going to ask you is if you like to self-study or do classes more, or is it a mix for you? And I find that interesting because one of my friends who's a learner, she's got an information dense work, and it's you know it's a chaotic work environment, so she's always overloaded and too much stuff and trying to catch up and play catch up and stuff. And she prefers classes more because she finds the structure of the classes much better than actually sitting down and reading, because she reads all the time for her work, emails and documents and custom papers for shipping equipment to different countries and all this kind of stuff. So it's like she likes to unplug from the the reading, and just like focus on people and taking notes and stuff. But um, so am I answering your question? I apologize.
Actually, yes, and
Yeah.
even more. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So I'm not some great thinker or anything like that. I just, from someone who's kind of half unplugged from the mainstream media. Um, I sometimes find it a little frustrating because I'm more of a conservative, a libertarian leaning person, and I get a lot of more progressive and uh, liberal stuff in the media, because most people in media are high in openness, and they tend to be high in um, more liberal thinking, which is not bad. We need different ways of thinking. It's
Mhm.
just, sometimes I just find it's so overt that it drives me crazy. And it's like part of the reason why I've unplugged, you know. But I'll go into spaces. I don't believe in being in a silo though. It's like the indie web people are very highly progressive. SCA people who are medieval reenactors, they tend to be more progressive as a whole, a collective,
Hmm.
and so I'm high in openness, but I am more conservative leaning. I'm an oddball. So I see things a little bit. I'm a little quirky myself. So, but thank you. I'm totally open to answering more questions if you have them.
Oh, okay. First, I would say too, though, being quirky is one of the best ways to be a learner because it, not that you get to the point where it's like squirrel, squirrel,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
you can be interested in so many different things and learn so much, and then that makes a connection to something else, and then this takes you there, and it's like exploring. It is exploring.
yeah.
I think that's
It,
wonderful.
it's like mental journeys you take,
Yes.
and they're really. It's like I can't. We all, my whole family has health issues, and my brother and I are my mom and my brother wife's caregivers. Um, Not terrible bad, but it's chronic stuff. Um,
Hmm.
so I have downtime. So it's like then I usually go on my rabbit trails online and learn stuff, or do podcasting or writing my stuff. And I don't travel because I do a little bit of travel once in a great while, but those are far and few between. But I can think and I can learn, and it takes me on journeys. Um, and I feel like I've done adventures in safe adventures. The only
Oh,
thing I have to is to challenge my mental what do you call it? Uh, my axioms and things.
yeah. And like you were saying too, so many people are sharing their knowledge, their experience, their travels
Yeah,
online that
yeah,
you can, if you want to see a place, no doubt in mere seconds, you
yeah,
can find, somebody's little 15-minute home movie, or you can find a full documentary series about a place. So, yeah, the superhighway has given us a lot of opportunities to travel places that we wouldn't do in person.
right. Yeah. I'd love to have you back again sometime and talk about your journey and your travels, and your experience in working in media production and teaching, because we I usually like to try to cover um, teaching and mentoring as well as part of my thing. But if you're up for that, maybe we could do that in the future.
Oh, very much so. I'd be honored and I would
Oh,
enjoy
cool.
it, I'm sure.
Oh, cool. Cool. So one last question. um do you have any thoughts or words of encouragement for other learners or creatives?
Yeah, I sure do. Stay curious. And these days, there's so much more to discover, whether it's, about, gee, what's beyond the edges of that galaxy cluster? And, go to the NASA website, explore there, and inner work as well. What's happening at the molecular level? What are we discovering about subatomic particle physics and all of those? And then what we're finding out about other peoples and other cultures is just stay curious. It's amazing out there. And also, what people are coming up with creatively is pretty fascinating. So I'd say stay curious, try to find something new every day. That doesn't have to be go deep, but just, oh, I didn't know that. Or let me just see what's up in kids music, or what's happening in ballet and football. Also, I would encourage people to, if they are learners, they're also by their very nature able to absorb things. So if they could also think of sharing, speaking up, getting involved, make media, do something like what you're doing, look into the STEAM programs: science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, and learn things there and encourage others. Also, keep on doing it. Keep on learning. Please, we need it. And what you were talking about before with all of the things that are available to learn on YouTube, whether it's how to repair your washing machine or don't learn brain surgery there, but yeah, but share what you know. Yeah. But like you say, share what you know, keep on learning. And even if you don't formally teach, just share a bit, whether it's comments on a discussion in something else you're watching, and stay curious and keep asking questions.
Thank you very much, Pamela, for being on Knowledge Fellowship. And thank you, everyone, for watching and for subscribing and hanging with me and going on this learning journey together. You take care. Bye-bye.